Okay, now we're rolling.
All right. All right. This is Portland, Oregon. This is the Portland Dispatch for February 23rd, 2023. My name is Dennis Dale. I'm here with my co-host, Cam Boden. Say hello to Cam.
How's it going?
Hey, you're a longtime Portland resident, right? How long?
Yeah, as long as you.
A
Just
couple of
about.
months shy of me, I think, right? Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
and your you, your time in Portland has been something of a journey, hasn't it? Intellectually, philosophically, politically, right?
Yeah. I when I moved here, got indoctrinated into wokeism briefly. Then came to my senses, and
How liberal were you when you came to? Well, now wait a minute. You came here about almost 10 years ago, around 2013, probably.
not not. I was pretty much non-political, and whatever was going to help me fit into the place that I moved to was kind of what I gravitated toward really loosely. Um, and then back then, Antifa was more of like environmentalists. Like it was mostly environmentalists doing activism, doing like shutting the bridges down, stuff like that. Train derailments, setting shit on fire.
Wholesome things like that.
Those guys were the radicals back then. But
Yeah.
and so I was hanging out with environmentalists, they were very anti-police. Like they were really like all the people that I knew that were heavily anti-police in like 2015 when all this stuff really started to get really crazy. They were all environmentalists. They weren't like anti-fascists. There was no Nazi. There was not yet really any. There was talks about race, but it was not the central focus of people's minds the way it is right now. And yeah, I was woke, fairly woke, but like more like woke adjacent. And I feel like that's how a lot of people in Portland are. They're going along with it,
Right.
but they're not really as woke people would say, like actively anti-racist versus somebody who's just like against racism. You know, very disengaged sense of wokeism where I'm just like, oh yeah, totally, this stuff's all terrible. It's everybody's oppressed, like it really sucks. Trying to like lean into that loosely, but not really that involved ideologically. Enough to get like brief Trump derangement syndrome. I hated Trump at first, and but then he was really kind of a turning point for me where I realized that everything that I thought I knew about him had suddenly been supplanted into my brain through like clear propaganda.
Now this is interesting. I mean, have you thought about the turn? The turn you took to Trump? How fast was it? Or not? You know, you hated him at first. At what point did you start thinking, wait a minute?
Yeah, it was. Oh man, you know, I think I might
It's
have.
not really clear, is it? Because I mean, my appraisal of him was this is fucking crazy, but I love what he's saying. You know, and the more it went on, the more I was drawn in. You know.
Yeah, I think I told you when I was at Portland State. This is probably at like my peak, brief, semi woke adjacent period. That was right when that was, I guess, like 2016, right when he got elected.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I gave a presentation, an anti-Trump presentation.
Nice.
An
Oh God.
an anti-Trump pro-refugee.
Oh,
No, but you know what we should do? You know what we should do is I still have the presentation on Google Drive. I should redo it and
yeah.
show how that, because that was like my apex of wokeness. So that would be a funny thing to
Right.
do to represent that presentation. But yeah, the whole thing was total nonsense. Oh, I talk I talk shit on Ann Coulter in that presentation. But yeah, that what I guess what the real turning point was. I mean, it wasn't really a turning point with Trump necessarily. The first turning point was becoming anti-woke, unwoke, and then anti-woke, which was like, I couldn't, and this is the way it is for everybody, I couldn't keep up with the wokeism anymore.
Right.
It got too much and it became like, made me feel like I was walking on eggshells all the time. And then I started to change. Honestly, a lot of it was like YouTube as well, like changing from mainstream media to online media and balancing out the information stream was where really a lot of it changed. And then it became what you often hear people say, which has become like mimetic, which is like Trump isn't that bad, like
Right.
you don't have to like him, but just admit he's not that bad. And that's where the real switch got turned, is that really he's not that bad. And really, I really had to fundamentally change what I thought I wanted in a presidential candidate to begin with, which is like this person who's supposed to look like presidential. Once you detach from that and you just go off of policy and are you pro-America or are you not? Or basics like, are you living in reality or are you not? Then Trump easily becomes the sole person to even be on the playing field as somebody to vote for.
Right. Well, I was struck by he was the only guy who seemed to be making the pitch that he was on the side of the voter, of the American citizen, and that was his pitch. Whereas, everybody else, it was Hillary. I'm a woman, you must elect me. And there was Obama, I'll be the first black president. You don't want to be a racist, do you? And then there was Bush. Well, we got Bush in 2000. It's been so long now. But he kind of degraded the office so much with his behavior. I mean, he shouldn't have been that bad. All he had to do was play the game. But the guy was kind of Trump before Trump, in being buffoonish. But they all seem to make the mistake about Trump thinking he's stupid. And that's the one thing he isn't. He's really anti-intellectual. He's not. He doesn't have an intellectual bone in his body, but he's very sharp, I think.
Yeah, he's not sophisticated by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, he comes from Queens. He's outer boroughs, and they're the Manhattan
right
people.
Yeah, and he was never, doesn't really seem like he was ever really accepted by the elite, even though he had their money, and he wasn't really ever accepted by regular people because he was so economically far detached from those circumstances. But I mean, yeah, like,
well, he was fine as long as he was a comic figure doing his show. He could be, ha ha ha, we laugh at him. And then all of a sudden he wants to be president. And they're like, they're shocked that this guy, this clown wanted to be president, I guess. But the question is, what does he mean now in 2024? I wonder,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's supposed to be a brilliant move, his going to Palestine, East Palestine. I don't know. I mean, I'm really torn because Trump remains frustrating in his behavior. He doesn't want to step up in a lot of ways. When he was doing that ridiculous, I thought he had officially ended his political career when he came out with those.
The trading cards?
The trading cards, right? Were they NFTs or whatever?
Yeah, something like that. I don't fucking know.
But he just keeps going. He survives even himself, But I didn't want to talk about Trump too much anyway. We're still on your journey. Unless you don't want to talk about this at all.
Yeah, I can keep talking about it.
Because I'm thinking that maybe it started getting woke, and you were becoming a target of this as a white male, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
It was that environmentalist thing before.
And it's a complex kind of spider web of all these different things that happened one after the other, right? Like I lost multiple jobs because I wasn't woke enough, essentially. I lost friendships because I wasn't being able to keep up with how much wokeism was being practiced by my friends. Dating situations, which trying to find anti or unwoke women in Portland is impossible. It's just no point.
No.
I mean, like you can go on dating apps and check off only conservative people, but you're probably not going to really find very many to choose from. School was hearing stuff like every single class became ruthlessly wokeified and like put through a critical lens.
Right.
So it was like I just woke up one day and felt like I was drowning in it. Like with school, friendships, work, diversity and inclusion trainings that are just like horror shows of anti-whiteness, like overt anti-whiteness. It's you start to like something just started to feel off one day and then the feeling didn't go away. And having to go from believing all of that stuff or going along with it to some degree to not just realizing that hardly any of it's true, but that it's purposefully manipulated.
It's deliberate lying.
Yeah. That's, it wasn't just like, oh, I don't really quite line up with this stuff anymore. It was like, I have to get away from this. Like I knew I had become a part of something that was dangerous.
It's toxic.
Yeah. And it's unlike anything I've ever seen. In terms of ideologies that have overtaken the American mindset. And having a background and stuff like that academically of like studying societies and things like that, there's so many hallmarks to this stuff that you start to see parallels of things that are like nightmarish in terms of their implications for the West.
Yeah. And I think I didn't know. See, you were kind of, I never knew you to be like that progressive, right? But I knew you were kind of liberal. I could always joke around with you, though, with the like politically incorrect humor and stuff. But then I guess I saw you and I think your girlfriend and another guy downtown. Must have been 2015, and we were all down there filming this big clash between Antifa and like Patriot Prayer, Proud Boys. Remember, it was along the waterfront. It was the same time. It was the same day that they harassed Elijah Schaefer on the street, and they harassed you guys, I think, too, probably.
Yeah, right? I think I remember.
Well, it was the time that you and your buddy got harassed, I think, by Antifa.
Yeah, and he ended up on the front page of the Willamette Week in a photo of him like kicking away people who were attacking him because they were telling us, or they were asking us, whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? And we were just walking around with cameras,
right,
taking photos and videos of it, and they demanded to know whether we were over there with the fascists or with the communists. And once we didn't answer them, the whole crowd just immediately turned on us and started attacking him. I had to choke a guy out.
Really?
One of the guys had he had a ring on that had all these spikes all over it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and so when he punches somebody in the face, it like cheese grates their face, like punches a dozen different holes in it.
Wow.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, he got me in the hand with it. But yeah, if I saw that on him, and when he tried to attack my friend, I knew that if he got a shot in on my friend, that like you could take somebody's full eyeball out with one of these things. It's fucking hardcore. Yeah, it's like some medieval shit. And yeah, I choked that guy out, and then Antifa came up and maced me, and then I let him go. Well, I took him to the ground, and then I was choking him out, and they came up and maced me and started punching me. You should have felt the punches, man. It was, it was like a toddler.
I love it.
I was like, oh no. And then a medic immediately came up, and another Antifa comes up. So they come and bear mace you, and then another Antifa comes up and gives you medical attention for the bear mace that the prior. It's like, what?
They're LARPers. This was a thing, and it was intense during 2020. Yeah, I mean, they had a little black ambulance, the paramedics. And the idea is, that they take over services. So not only they're rioting, but we're going to be the medics too. So, you're not even going to call the fire department. You're going to call Antifa, and they're going to pull up in their ratty little black converted, their ambulance, slash snack truck. And it was always funny because they would bring snacks. There's always a snack truck, and they're out there rioting. They were really into their snacks, the kids.
The LARP element of it is important.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of what gives Antifa meaning is you put on this uniform. It's like the military, but for pussies, like you put this uniform on and you're a part of this bigger group and you're a brigade and you learn techniques and tactics and you like go through you go through training. And then you go out on the streets for your fucking missions, and you're dressed like a fucking ninja. You're like something out of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, and it's hitting all of these like nostalgic heartstrings of what you wanted to be when you were like 6 years old. It's just this total badass who fights crime, and you're a superhero. You remember in Seattle, the superheroes that were in Seattle, like the LARPers,
the fake superhero.
What was that guy's name?
Remember that guy? Yeah, he was a black dude, a young black guy, and he would go around with a cape and something. What was his name? Somehow he didn't get himself killed doing this.
He got his ass kicked like numerous.
Did he? Well, yeah.
Yeah, he got fucked up a couple of times, didn't he? And he's been arrested.
He's not a normal guy. He's not a stable person.
There were a few of them. There were like,
was there more than one? I remember that one guy.
Yeah, there was, there were like 3 or 4 of them. But the one like big black guy, and he wore like a full on cape and full mask and everything. Yeah, he kind of got disgraced. He became a joke because he got his ass kicked.
Yeah, you gotta hold it down. If you can't wear a cape, you gotta. Yeah. He's like a pimp, with his hat. You can't put the cape on unless you can defend it. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of LARPing, Antifa probably supersedes those Seattle guys because at least the Seattle people were really fighting real crime. Or attempting to not fighting any real crime at all because that guy is absolutely terrible at being a superhero.
That guy who was wearing the cape in Seattle was like 20 years ago now, right? He was really taking his life into his own hands. Antifa is kind of a joke. They even though they were going up against the cops, they weren't really, it wasn't that dangerous. I was out there, I stopped going out there because I was more afraid of Antifa than of the cops, Yeah.
They really can fuck people up when there's enough of them.
Yeah, just when you can't be in the the whole crowd of them.
And there's something terrifying when you watch a whole crowd turn on you like that. Like when you watch them, when you see one say, tell us who you're with, who are you with, whose side are you on, and you don't say anything, you just see the whole crowd change. They go,
They turn, yeah.
They like literally say like, they're one of them.
It's weird.
Or no, you know what he did? You know what they did? They said Nazi. That's
really?
what they yelled. Yeah.
At you guys?
That's what they yelled. When we wouldn't tell them who we were, one of them just goes,
instantly,
Nazis!
Like
and then the whole fucking crowd turned on us.
They all knew what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't disrespect the power of that. Whatever the spell they're under, man, it's pretty powerful. And the LARPing, there's a logic to it. It even goes back, I think, to the original anarchists who talked about building alternative, sort of institutions and stuff. And that's the idea. They'll build alternatives to the police and fire department, whoever. We take care of us, they'll say. Of course, at the same time, half these antifa guys probably work for the NGOs or the city itself, dispensing tax dollars to various diversity, equity grifts, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people within the city that are at the very least sympathetic to Antifa and to a further degree are out there with them, maybe even dressing up in black bloc. I don't know, I mean, it would be interesting there's that Antifa Watch page.
Right.
That gives people info on some of the inner workings of who the people actually are, and some you can it's like a database, like it tells you what their occupations are and things like that. There's faculty in Portland State University that are actively involved in Antifa, which shouldn't even be
is that even allowed, right?
Yeah, they put like Antifa propaganda up in the windows and stuff. The hospitals, all the nonprofits are, have Antifa in them. The shelter systems, all of the environmental, especially environmental nonprofits, have a lot of Antifa members in them.
Is there a lot of eco-terrorism left out there? I never hear about it now.
In Seattle, 2 chicks just got arrested. My computer's broken right now. Otherwise, I'd look it up. I don't remember their names, but yeah, they tried to derail a train up there, like an oil train, and they got like 4 years. So, yeah, I think it's a lot of train derailments. Booty Gig said there's 1,000 train derailments a year. Like Ohio's not a big deal. There's 1,000 a year. I would think that most of those are probably like infrastructure problems of like stuff not working properly. But I think a significant portion of them are activists, especially like the stuff that's going through like native land and like, environmentally protected areas. Like if they cut a train track through an area that's environmentally protected, they're all over it and they'll do stuff to try to sabotage things.
Yeah, I remember them doing something along those lines years ago. By the way, I'd just like to acknowledge the Tahaniki people who originally inhabited this land. Thank you for your wisdom. We honor you.
I feel a lot better now that you said that.
Thank you.
Just got it out there.
Yeah.
We must atone.
Yeah, it's no joke though. The stolen land thing, it really is. I think it's the trump card in their logical arsenal, such as it is. The stolen land thing means just all bets are off. White American male person. Even the land under your feet is stolen. And it came on big during 2020 as part of the whole radicalization around the BLM stuff. We started hearing that a lot more, I thought.
Stolen land.
Stolen land, right? And they started taking down the statues of Lincoln. They took down the Lincoln statue of Teddy Roosevelt, and we had a beautiful statue called the Settlers or something, and there was, a settler family pointing at Oregon. because Oregon, of course, used to be known as a place where the Lewis and Clark Trail ends. It's, pioneer history. So here in Portland, it's a huge reversal, really, when they start tearing down the statues and stuff. I mean, we've got lots of stuff. I mean, there's a Custer Street here, if you haven't noticed nearby.
Is there a Custer Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, the what statues are left here? They've gotten pretty much all. Did they take the Tabor one down?
Mount Tabor, yeah. What was on Mount Tabor?
Some guy.
Oh, you're right. He was, yeah, they definitely took him down. And they put up a statue
some
of York.
white guy.
And they put up what they called the statue of York, and it was, I think, like a polystyrene head of a generic head of a black dude. York was the slave who accompanied Lewis and Clark on the trail here. Lewis or Clark, one of those guys owned this guy, York. And he was part of the party. And he didn't get his freedom after the trip either. It was treated pretty harshly. But anyway, they put him up there, and then somebody knocked that down. It was wasn't a real statue. Some anonymous person put up the York statue. Yeah. But they were not, there's a soldier statue they'd love to take down, but it's on top of this spire. It's about 2 stories up. The one you've probably seen is right across from the federal courthouse downtown. But,
I don't know. I never really paid much attention to the statues that were here, but suddenly paid attention to them when they all got ripped down.
Yeah, but they got plans to put up, I don't know if they don't have plans for any statues probably. But as you see, if you go around downtown, you see there's lots of ugly art. There's awful lots of ugly woke art.
Yeah. Yeah, there is, and a lot of ugly, like just meaningless modern art of just like blobs of stuff.
Cheesy.
It's like huge
abstract
pieces.
Art. Here's a chrome bulb shaped thing. Yeah, isn't that cool? Right? Stuff like that. We had cool things doing. We had the best things, of course. Antifa took down the elk statue, 120 years old.
Yeah, like what was the point of that?
And people, people at the time were writing thumbsucker essays about what it meant, why Antifa would take down the beautiful elk statue. And it was nothing really. They were just the elk statue had that big fountain around it. And the fountain was dry, so it had like a big basin around this big statue, and so Antifa started hanging out there, became a focal point, so they naturally started building bonfires in this big, what was formerly the basin holding the fountain water. They started just build huge bonfires in it every night. And, of course, every night, that thing was bronze. It was cast in some sort of bronze or something. And so every night it was getting charred more and more from the flames. And they said, okay, let's take it out of here before Antifa completely destroys it. And then what they started doing is chipping away at the short little stub wall that was holding in the fountain water, the fountain wall. They started chipping away at that and making nice, big, sharp projectiles to throw at the cops and whatever. So then the city had to come in and eventually start and take down what was looking like a Roman ruin, right? It was chipped apart. They took a big piece of wall out, just chipping at it to make projectiles. Finally, the city said, okay, we got to take the wall out to deny them the projectiles. Right, and that's why we still have a dirt mound there where we used to have that nice elk statue.
Yeah, you haven't seen them around much lately, though. I don't really know where they went. You were mentioning what a magical coincidence it is that they've suddenly gone on hiatus now that they got the
now that Biden's in office,
yeah,
right?
Now that the thing.
You know, the guy.
You know, the guy.
God bless him, right?
Dark Brandon.
Dark Brandon. Oh, man. Yeah, no, and I mean, I did not think there was that direct. Now I suspect that there is, but before I would have not thought that the Democratic Party was really pulling the strings for our friends in Antifa. But they're so quiet, and there have been opportunities, right? I mean, in the last couple of years, there have been several opportunities for them to riot. You know.
Yeah, stuff you really thought they would have gone off the rails about. Nothing really happened with Tyree Nichols. There have been several other prominent police shootings. I don't know the names of the guys because they're really recent, but or like that one that you showed me of the Jesus Christ. Talk about the guy in LA who got shot by the cops, who threw the knife at the cops.
Stumpy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't write over that guy. Yeah, Stumpy. Stumpy McBadass.
Is that what you're calling him now, Stumpy?
No, I didn't. I wasn't even.
So, yeah.
I mean, and maybe it wasn't justified, but police shot and killed, right, in pursuit of this guy with a knife who had no legs. He had stumps that he was waddling on his like half length of his thighs. Is all he's got, and he's waddling around, and he's got a knife, and the cops shot him, and no riots. But it turns out there's more to it, that he had just randomly run up behind a guy, stumped up behind him, and stabbed him, and then the cops show up. And he threatened to throw the knife at him, but still, I could see making an argument how that's an unjustified shooting, right? And I could sure see them rioting over that shit, but nothing, crickets.
I mean, I think any time you like shoot a legless guy who is like 15 feet away from you, it's going to be unjustified. Like, it was definitely an unjustified shooting, and that's the thing that was weird about. When you told me about it, I thought they were going to go apeshit. A legless guy, an unjustified shooting, a legit unjustified shooting of a legless guy, black guy, no legs, probably some sort of character in the community. I thought LA was going to fucking go crazy over that, and nothing, crickets. Especially here, like nothing happened here. Well, there were like 300 people, right? 300 people kind of marched.
Oh, yes.
Across the bridge.
Who's that for? Was that
not for
Stumpy? And maybe it was for Tyree.
For Tyree, that's that's the other one that I was.
And they were very peaceful.
I was conflating those for a second.
And that was like maybe a month ago. Yeah.
Yeah, but like the same general response for Tyree too is just kind of crickets. A few hundred people peacefully walking across there, but nothing. No George Floyd energy.
Yeah, and it's just Dark Brandon reigns, right? And all is quiet. See, and it's almost like they say. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to direct. When Trump was in office, right, leading up to this election, really. That's kind of what the George Floyd riots were. Was the anti-Trump campaign. It was just getting crazier and crazier, and then they got rid of Trump, and it's like, okay, we'll take it away as long as you guys are good and don't elect Trump. And it's probably true, right? If we were to elect, Trump again. If we elect Trump again, they're going to riot. They did riot here the first time we elected Trump.
Yeah, I think even though they're super quiet right now, if that happened again, of course they would go absolutely.
And that would
bananas.
be spontaneous. Even their handlers don't have to hand them cash. And I do think at this point, a lot of it might depend on somebody passing out cash to somebody else. The local guys here might be getting money for agitating crap, dark money.
I don't know. Have you ever? I mean, I've heard stories about obviously the FBI is infiltrating all these groups, but have you heard anything specific about Antifa or recent proof that people are getting paid off to be agitators?
There's Democracy Now! A week or two ago was I didn't hear the whole segment, but a week or two ago on Democracy Now! They were touting this big expose, as they saw it, about an FBI informant who infiltrated Denver Antifa during the 2020 rioting. And he was this character, and he showed up, and he was, this kind of, like a flashy sort of character. And supposedly he was encouraging them to do violence. And that's the way these guys were playing it up, being very, very sympathetic to Antifa. These Democracy Now! Was playing it up as if, it's the FBI agitators that were responsible for the violence. Which I don't necessarily discount.
Right.
Maybe the story is accurate about this guy, and there's this guy. But I don't know what FBI informant really entails either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like what's up with Enrique Tarrio? Do you know much about
That's another
his informant stuff?
And he's an informant, I think, maybe just because he was involved in criminal stuff that had to do with drug dealing, and he turned somebody in. He's a snitch. But then
I wonder if they threatened him, and then they gave an alternative of like, exactly. Hey, you can wear a wire, or you can tell us X, Y, and Z, and then maybe we won't, like run over your fucking daughter at a stop sign outside of elementary school.
Or anyone who's an informant, I guess they're compromised in that maybe they're part of. Anyone who, is a snitch, might also have some deal he has to live up to with the FBI, right, to get out of whatever he got out of when he ratted out his friends. Maybe he's agreed to do stuff like this. I don't know. But I think Proud Boys and these right-wing things are rotten probably with FBI guys. They have to be, because you saw the Whitmer case where it turns out like they were, three or four dumb guys were manipulated by three or four FBI guys or something. It was just ridiculous. And the Ku Klux Klan still is out there, and it's hard to believe that anybody, even the most radicalized white guy, is joining the actual Klan, right? The joke about that is that it's all
still
FBI
out there?
Agents. There's somebody out there, still calling himself the Klan.
Yeah,
probably thousands of members at least. And some of
them. But
they're
having meetings, stuff like that.
Occasionally they march, I think, still, which is insane.
Yeah,
they'd probably get attacked and killed on the street, and people would get away with it at this point, right? But
yeah, you'd be crazy to wear. Do you remember, like, I think it was like Post Falls, Idaho, they used to have those KKK rallies once a year. They'd have like whole legions of KKK guys in Nazi uniforms. Right. And people would look at it like, okay, not really down with that, but at the same time, whatever.
We survived it. Yeah.
And it's like the visceral reaction to anything remotely like that today would be if you sent like several hundred guys in KKK uniforms, Nazi uniforms, out into a parade today, they
would just be attacked savagely by everyone, right? Like a zombie mob would come on them.
I mean, it would be interesting. It would be really interesting to see what the reaction would be, how quick Antifa would show up, and then what they would do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe they would all just join together, and it would be weird. The Antifa would, I don't know, realize, no, these are our brothers, and they would embrace.
They just become like some super organism.
The rest of us are watching like, what? No, and we all start running because we've all gathered to watch them tear each other apart, and then they turn outward and we flee. Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even one single guy in a KKK outfit would get his ass kicked. I don't know. I don't know if it would be worse if there were more of them or better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
In Portland, you can't have like a little normie rally in support of the police. I remember somebody tried to do that. And Antifa showed up. No, and they surrounded
like
them.
A Blue Lives Matter kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think it was these normies from, and they were right-wing, like the Christian conservatives. And it was a peace rally for peace. It was during the day by the waterfront, small rally for peace, and it was an appeal. It was in 2020 during the nightly rioting. It was an appeal for everybody to calm down and calm down about the police. It wasn't even like a Blue Lives rally like the Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer guys throw to be provocative. No, and like a dozen people down there by the waterfront and like 30 or 40 Antifa masked nearby and all in black trying to intimidate him. It was ridiculous.
Were there a lot of people that showed up?
No, they just grouped up and tried to like intimidate the shit out of him, and yelled stuff. But then the little pro police or whatever rally just they like a half an hour and then they just packed up and skedaddled because Antifa is just they're just creepy, and these were like suburban moms. And Antifa is just looming about and all in black. It's summer too, and it's hot out.
They are creepy, and that's another element of Antifa that I feel like nobody really talks about. Everybody kind of, you get the same pundits kind of making fun of them, and how they all look like meth heads, and they're all skinny, and they have soy diets and the cliches. But there is like a creep factor to these guys too. The all black is very ominous. Never showing your face. Like they're dressed like criminals. They're dressed like people that are going to rob a bank.
I don't know if you saw the one rally. It might have been the rally we were talking about before, but there was one where they decided to bring out these prop guillotines. And they had like 3 of them, and they were pretty impressive props. And they looked like guillotines, right? And I guess it was a reference to the French Revolution. And it was one of the rallies where they were squaring off with I always want to say Patriot Prayer. Yeah, that's what they call themselves, Patriot Prayer. Yeah. Who were the right-wingers who made a whole career out of trolling Antifa, right? Countless rallies these guys had where they just have their rally, their Blue Lives Matter rally downtown, and Antifa would show up to shut that down. Of course, those got violent.
Yeah. Whatever happened to Patriot Prayer too? Patriot Prayer.
They put them in jail.
All of them?
No, they put one guy in jail for 10 years, and I've got footage on the channel of I think both days. They put that one guy in jail, a prominent member. I forget his name. Alan Swinney. Alan Swinney. They put him in jail for.
That was the dude that pointed the gun.
He pointed a revolver.
And there's that. It's actually a badass photo of him pointing the gun right.
It's a revolver. It's an old school revolver. Yeah.
Like a wild man. For how long? How long did they put him in?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, and it's
for gun pointing.
I was on the ground for both events, and it was it was one event where his small group was getting chased out of town, and he and his group maced these Antifa weirdos that were following him. And I think I ate some of that mace because I got maced that day a little bit. Anyway, apparently they got a charge for that, for a macing, or or maybe he shot a paintball. And at one point, he shot a paintball and hit a girl in her boob. And he got a charge for that. Yeah, and then that was one day, that first day, the smaller event, and then there was this grand event. It was the last time they squared off Patriot Prayer and Antifa, because the cops shut down Patriot Prayer basically. And now that was the day he pointed the revolver, and he caught some other charge for that day, and it's bullshit. I was on the ground. I walked, and you could still walk among Antifa, so I walked along the Antifa side and along the Patriot, more on the right-wing side, because frankly, don't feel comfortable on the Antifa side. But it was just Antifa in those park blocks across from the central precinct, the police station, where the Patriot guys, not 100 of them even, were, they're backed up against the building, basically, having their rally, and Antifa is just everywhere. All black in the parks. They outnumber them about 3-1. And then they have lines, right? And they had little scuffles, and usually the Antifa lost. And you got to give Antifa credit, because they are a bunch of little kids almost. But they go in there and try to fight, and most of the Patriot Prayer guys were kind of beefy, corn-fed, working-class white guys.
Yeah, the size difference is unbelievable. Just the size difference alone. And that's almost like why they seem to go harder on the right-wing guys than Antifa, because once the right-wing guys go totally AWOL against the government, it's going to be way crazier than these black bloc goons. Yeah. Although all Antifa really ever does is just lights a Starbucks on fire. That's their signature move.
Well, yeah. When they turned hard on the cops, though, it's gotten really sinister.
Yeah.
Burning down the police precinct in Minneapolis was when they got away with that, that's kind of when this country said, we surrender to all of this shit, I mean, when they got away with Minneapolis, because we talk about it being bad here. Yeah, you're right. Here it's not really petty, because there's really millions of dollars have been lost, and all kinds of shit's happened, bad stuff's come out of it. But we haven't had the insanity of that Minneapolis. Well, almost, though. They try. Our little guys try.
It makes you wonder if right after George Floyd died, that was the apex of Portland Antifa. If this is really, if they're
spent.
Yeah, or if you think about what motivates, because obviously Antifa is hugely contingent on young people joining. And you and I have talked a little bit about before how it seems like there's probably, it's like a shitty dead end job. There's an underemployment factor to chronic underemployment in Antifa, where a lot of high turnover rate, a lot of people are probably joining Antifa when they're really lost and vulnerable, and they just took a college course on fucking the history of racism in Portland or something like that, and they're like, fuck, what do I do? And then they get a pamphlet from somebody, and then they go to a meeting, and then they join in on this thing. But then they probably the same thing that happened to me, where I very briefly became overwhelmed by the ideology, went along with it for a while. I didn't ever join that bullshit, but you could see a lot of people
humor it for a while.
Yeah, you could see a lot of people going into it for a while and then quickly realizing this is fucking crazy. Yeah. And then they leave, but then some stay, right? But then they've got to constantly be pulling people in. There's probably a lot of long timers there, but I would guess that a lot of people who get into it for a little while realize how crazy it is, and then they leave. Yeah. High turnover rate.
At first, you probably make a few friends, and it's bonding, and then that's going to sour, though, because there are probably so many crazy people now.
Yeah, and also the other thing too, with what happened to me, a lot of people in Antifa probably just are hey, I can't keep going down this rabbit hole. I've reached.
It's got to be exhausting as hell, right? It's got to be exhausting.
It is exhausting, yeah.
And you got to be outraged about everything always.
You have to be at a place in your life where you are chronically unhappy. When I became most sympathetic to wokeism was probably where, a time in my life where I was not like suicidally depressed or anything, but just like vulnerable to, any situation where you're new in town and you don't really know a lot of people and you're just trying to fit in. That's like the bread and butter of those types of movements. And the same kind of situation is that I was in it's true for, people who are 16, 17 years old and they're trying
to be worse.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out who they are and stuff like that. It's kind of the same thing as coming to a new town as an older person. You're trying to fit in the same way, trying to make friends and stuff.
Can we pause? I got to take a leak.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I didn't know what that looked like, but so far so good, right?
No, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. What were we talking about just now?
I don't remember.
Yeah. We're talking about Antifa squaring off with Patriot prayer groups. It's funny. We were talking about how the Patriot prayer, the right-wing guys were all bigger than Antifa. They had this one character that used to show up on the right-wing side that was a trans woman. Apparently it was a guy. It was a guy, definitely was a guy, in a dress, who used to wear, I don't think it was his real hair, it was a bob wig, like, straight bangs, like this. And he was a big guy. He was built like a potato, just one of these big dudes, kind of heavy set. And he would show up for these rallies on the Patriot Prayer side and get into scuffles with Antifa. It was such a freak show in 2020. Well, that wasn't 2020. That was before, actually. People forget that the lead up to 2020 for Portland. Oh, shit. The lead up to the 2020 summer riots for Portland was it was all the Trump years. So around 2015, as you know, we started having the battles between Antifa and Patriot Prayer. And Antifa really got to kind of hone their rioting skills in their campaigns with in their fights with Patriot Prayer.
Yeah, Patriot Prayer is an interesting topic too. Just kind of the constructive criticisms we've had of them, and it's cool to see local people come out, but also there's such a disproportionate level of organization with the sort of rallies that they have, and in comparison to what Antifa is capable of in Portland. You see big patriot themed rallies in Portland that are huge, and it's amazing to see how many people turn out to those. But specifically speaking of a group like Patriot Prayer, the rallies are not nearly as impressive in number, or the last time we saw them, they weren't. That thing where they marched across the bridge, there were a lot of people at that. I think that ruffled a lot of feathers. That was cool. But it would be interesting to see some better figureheads at the front of Patriot Front, and also just see more of an organizational element to it, a little bit more of an intellectual element to it.
Yeah.
Where maybe an image adjustment a little bit.
They don't well, it's not going to happen. They've shut these guys down, but these guys were, they were always going to be, Antifa has the intellectual, they're not. The Antifa is a bunch of crazies.
They do, yeah.
They do have something of what they would call back in the day an analysis. They've got a program and a plan, and the Patriot Prayer guys are just a bunch of beer drinking guys who understandably, are patriots who've decided to stand up in defense of this bizarre takeover of the country. But they have zero sophistication about the ideas, and all they have to answer Antifa with is old school, fuck yeah, America patriotism. There's a huge difference though too, and you can see in that if anybody's manipulating Patriot Prayer, it's maybe a few FBI guys. If maybe they, what are they called? Agents provocateur, guys who infiltrate an organization and encourage the others to do violence so that organization can be, then prosecuted for the crimes. But that's the only thing I see happening maybe with Patriot Prayer. Whereas with Antifa, the nature of it is I think they're being manipulated by powerful forces, and what if the government is giving them money or infiltrating them, I think it's probably doing something different. You know what I mean? I think it's because, like with the Trump thing, it was clearly, now I'm becoming more and more convinced that it was just directly about getting Trump, and that somebody was spending money here in Portland as they were everywhere else that was blowing up. And it was they were deliberately being manipulated to do this.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's a whole other separate rabbit hole to go down to try to figure out who's funding these different groups of people, and how it is that they can mobilize and organize so efficiently. Given how
flaky most of the Antifa rank and file are, really, too.
Exactly. It's like, it's astonishing the level of organization that these people have, given that their individual intelligence levels seem to not be very high, and their brains seem to be operating on very little other than mindless propaganda. It's almost like an ant colony. Like, you ever walk down the street, a hot summer day, you see one single ant kind of walking along on its own because it got too far away from the group and it can't sense any of the pheromones anymore. And now it's just like lost. It has no utility outside of its group. That's what those people remind me of. They are operationally defunct at an individual level, but once they get together, magically they're like accomplishing all of this stuff. Maybe it's just like basic mob intelligence. Like, a bunch of people get together and they start to behave. They start to accomplish things that no one person even really set out to do.
Yeah, I think with Antifa, the greater organization than they have as compared to Patriot Prayer, I think that reveals also the involvement of people you don't see, of powerful people encouraging them. And this training, it's very, if you've seen their training, it's pretty standardized, and it's pretty doctrinaire, old school Saul Alinsky fucking shit. Whereas when you see Patriot Prayer and they organize rallies, it's obviously grassroots. Like I said, it's probably rotten with FBI infiltrators. But it's a genuine grassroots movement. It's just a bunch of guys who are trying, and maybe a grifter or two, like Enrique Tarrio is probably a grifter at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think part of the difference too is that you're right. Like, Antifa has a history behind it. It has a whole infrastructure that was designed by people who are way smarter than these goons that are walking around today. Like, they're as destructive as left-wing intellectualism and postmodernism has been over the past 40 years, you're dealing with like what Reagan would describe as, it's not that they're ignorant, it's that everything they know just isn't really true. So it's like there is this legitimate left-wing intellectual movement happening over the past 40 years in the universities. The universities are exclusively a left-wing intellectual movement over the past 40 years. and their ideas might be wrong and destructive, but you do have a lot of people who are operating in the infrastructure of the hard left in an intellectual capacity that is different from what's going on the right. It's not,
Yes.
it's not to say that this trope of like the dummy redneck racists are what make up the right wing, the way the left views them.
Yeah.
But it's that there isn't as much academic discipline happening on the right now, in terms of what is potential. Like there's a lot of potential for right-wing intellectualism to recapture the university, to recapture culture, to be cool and sexy again, the way it was like in the 80s and the 90s, to just be like even just like a moderate, just like a run of the mill, and don't worry about fucking political correctness and stuff like that. Like there really is space for that to reinvigorate America, but it has to be in a way that gets people thinking again. It can't just be Trump. It can't just be a slogan. It can't just be one thing or another thing. It has to be a whole movement. And the hard left is really, really adept at capturing culture, at making things cool. As like cringy as it is to think about something like wokeism being cool, because obviously it's not. It's fucking lame. Being woke is super lame. It's disingenuous. It's full of lies. It's all about self-deception and narcissism. But it has become cool to a certain degree, especially in places like Portland, in a way that moderacy and conservatism are just not, they're just not marching to that same step.
Well, yeah, maybe that means we're doomed, because if you have to appeal to young people now, I mean, there's nothing I can think of good that will appeal to the average kid. The average kid now is so far gone. I mean, like a person in their early 20s or younger.
Zoomer
Is
Gen
so
Zer.
far gone that they look at things like family, wholesome things, these things that were great in the 80s, 90s, that attitude you talked about, patriotism. They cannot fathom patriotism at this point, I think. It's been so drilled out of them. I fear that you can't talk people back into sanity, and it's going to take something more, something like coercion to get people to behave themselves again.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we're talking about how I got captured briefly by wokeism, what was my journey through that fucking disaster of ideas? And it's like, what is this thing that is attaching itself to people's brains? And it's really, it's like you got to think about where a society has to be at to be captured by something like this.
Yeah.
Really, really one that is not proud of itself, that doesn't have a backbone, one where the average person isn't really willing to stand up for themselves, but is ready to succumb to something and surrender and say, you know what, you have me, and I am ready to give myself up to you. The way people fall victim to this, there's so many religious elements to it. And that was part of what really took me out of it as well, was, that you really start to feel like you're in a cult with this stuff. You really start to feel like you are. And that's not really something, it's just like one day you wake up and you realize that you're part of something that is all about deception. And it's all about creating an alternative universe that can never really exist. And do you want to live in that? Or do you want to, it's so cliche at this point, but it really is a red pill, blue pill thing. It's such a fitting name for coming out of the fog of this stuff to take a red pill.
And how ironic is it that both of the Wachowski brothers are now the Wachowski sisters.
Isn't that bizarre, man? That those guys,
they took the ultimate blue pill, didn't they?
Totally, they did. They did, and that's I get to arguments with people about stuff like this all of the time. This idea that like, well, why don't you just accept people for who they really are? And you say, oh, well, I am accepting people for who they really are. The Wachowskis are really two biological men. Exactly. Whatever happened to going after the truth, even though it's easier to live in a world of lies? That's really what the Matrix is about.
Right.
Just go back to your nice little life where you get to live in fantasies and you get to pretend. It's really fundamentally kind of a hero's journey into adulthood in a lot of ways. And that's really what I see the transgender movement as, is this prolonged adolescence of you get to pretend that you're whatever you want. Transgender, trans species, transracial is probably going to start to become a thing.
No, maybe not.
And really what accepting adulthood fundamentally means is you're forgoing a world of bullshit to live in the world of truth. That's what we need from real adults right now. We need people who are ready to preserve and maintain reality, because we're in a world where there are people with a brain virus that are actively trying to destroy reality. And transgenderism is probably the most obvious example of that agenda.
Right. I don't understand people, some who are moderates, some who are kind of on the right, who don't understand the gravity of the whole transgender battle. They don't understand.
It has unbelievable social
outraged.
Implications to it.
Yeah, it's such an untenable world they want to corrupt. And where you're talking about how, that their cult-like devotion to this world they're trying to create, I think, too, that the people, ultimately, the very smartest people in the movement on the left, know that world's never going to be created. They know racial justice is never going to be achieved. No, the whole point is to keep it going. It's like the war on terror. It has no end. The war is the point, obviously. And until America can somehow, and it's impossible for anyone to imagine how we could, but if we could somehow reset and the conventional wisdom could just finally become what it should be, which is, a more rational understanding of race relations, for one thing. That no, America's not, uniquely racist. It's nonsense. America's, patriarchy is not some trick that the guys played on the girls. These are such the stupid ideas, and every leftist idea relies on this idea that there was this utopia that we strayed from, until this poisonous ideology, racism or patriarchy or now homophobia, it's taken us away from that ideal world. And of course, it's obvious to me that these ideal worlds they assume never exist. That's never existed.
Yeah, I don't know what they do. When you talk about if you say stuff like they know that they're lying, they know that they're after something that they can't achieve. I don't know what the modern leftist knows and doesn't know. I don't know how they deal with knowledge, because you're talking about somebody. I mean, these people really are. You hear people like Peterson, throw around postmodern and you left and right, And it's almost something that like the left makes fun of us of, like, oh, like, you know, like it becomes like a cliche thing to call people postmodern. But these people really are true postmodernists. And what that really fundamentally means is that the idea of reality itself becomes malleable. And what we know as reality is only a tool that people who look like you and me use to exploit and take advantage of other people. We control reality, and then we force everybody else to live in our vision of reality. That's where you get into weird bullshit of like, you know, the White House infographic telling people that being on time is a product of white supremacy, because that's part of, you know, time is it's not what's hilarious about that one in particular is that it's not, time is clearly not an invention of Westerners. Like, people had conceptions of time way before their supposed white supremacy timeline began. But yeah, it's interesting to think about how they're calling time into question, the nature of time into question. That means that eventually they're going to go after physics. You know, mathematics is already on the chopping block. The only, you know, they take mathematics off of the curriculum, or they take Portland. Yeah, they take exams off of the requirements for getting a high school diploma, and then they take you're now going to woke math class where you're learning more about anti-racism than about math. That's
actually happening now.
That's actually happening now. And the whole idea of, like, they're talking about math now like it's a it's a trick. Like, it's this tool that was created where this is really critical theory applied to mathematics, is this idea that math was like created as this language that like only white people can understand. And the only reason that the non-white kids aren't passing math class is because we're setting them up to not be able to speak a language that only white people are, like, you know, like
capable of understanding.
Like mathematics is this thing. I mean, it's so weird the way it's like overtly racist itself, the attempt at anti-racism. It's like, it's, you know, they're really condescending black people who, by saying that like math itself is a language that they can't, I mean, it's
they
like
can't learn.
It's the math thing is super weird, man. It's really weird.
Well, I mean, like I say, critical race theory makes perfect sense if you're a racist, and it's you know, then you say, yeah, okay, black people can't do math. I'm a racist. I'm willing to entertain that notion. Obviously, they just, you know, they view it differently. I view it with indifference. I'm willing to give black people a break. I'm fine with them not doing math well, but I don't want to pretend that they can do math better than they can. And it's not racist that they can't do math, because last time I looked, I can't do math. And the gap between Asian school achievement and white achievement is getting bigger, because white kids are getting dumber in this country.
Well, with math too, it doesn't seem like it's just a cognitive difference. It's also, there's a disciplinary element to math that makes people who are capable of doing math not even want to do math. There's also like math anxiety, where you hate math so much that you don't study enough, and then you get freaked out by math, and then you've got a test coming up, and you like develop this relationship with mathematics that makes you avoid doing it, and then all this anxiety builds. So there's a lot of weird stuff around math and in general, but it seems to be, a lot of it seems to be discipline. that maybe the difference partially is cognitive differences between demographics, but also disciplinary differences between mathematics, because Asian people, there's a trope that, I'll get the Asian kid to do my math homework kind of a thing. It's not just that he's smarter than you, it's that he's willing to do things that you don't feel like doing.
Well, yeah.
And Asian people are definitely better disciplined than, they have a history of being better disciplined.
When I say I can't do math, I mean I wasn't very good at math, but I'm shocked at how young people literally can't do math. They can't do division. They can't multiply. Basic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Isn't it kind of becoming irrelevant in a way? Like, it doesn't seem
Well, you don't need it, but I would have liked to have been better at math at school, because I just feel like it would have made me sharper generally.
I regret not getting better at it more for the disciplinary aspects of it, because it's that one subject that's different from the rest of the subjects that really forces you to do. I mean, there's kids that love math, but most people don't. Most people don't want to have, oh God, math class. Oh, I got to do my math homework. Fuck. It's more of an exercise in forcing you to rigorously go through disciplines that suck, but you're still going through it, even though you'd rather be doing something else.
Yeah. Well, that's what getting a degree really is. It's not like
it's a test.
Okay, you have enough to get through the 4 years, get your BA, whatever it is you got. Now, of course, it's a test of your wokeness and how aware you are of your privilege.
Isn't it weird, though? It's like the one discipline you never thought they'd be able to capture somehow becomes like an unusually woke. Like, if you watch videos about what they're teaching kids in math class, now it's very bizarre. It doesn't have anything to do with math. It's more of like a struggle session of like why certain people can't do math as well.
Maybe they hit it hard because that's the worst subject for and the one group that they're most concerned about, the black kids.
Yeah, it's just
that's their worst fucking area. I don't know.
It's just like there's nothing overtly ideological at all about math. It's like literally pure logic.
Yes.
Like
logic is under fire too. Logic and objectivity are the problems.
So maybe I'm kind of answering my own question then with it's like they go after any system of logic. It's almost like math is the ultimate target because it's purely logical, and that's a perfect framing of postmodernism. But the goal of postmodernism, and the reason it's so dangerous, is to deconstruct reality itself. And, you can talk about who's at the wheel of power insofar as our understanding of reality goes and who kind of dictates what it's going to be the standards. Like gender is obviously a clear example of something that is so set in stone and such a pillar of our view of reality, and yet it's under serious attack. That's a perfect example of a postmodern take down of a clear pillar of our reality. And that's what's really going on with wokeism. That's why it's so dangerous is they are trying to take reality.
Yeah.
And once they get it, I don't think that the people who want to live in society where a modern world exists, I don't think those people are going to get it back. This isn't just a fantasy we're telling ourselves. This, you're talking about, people get burned at the stake for defending reality. People have given their lives to defend reality. Their whole life's work is trying to explain how reality works and what's the fundamental mathematics behind the way reality works. You have people who have gotten Nobel Prizes for their work on defining what reality even is at all. It's such a core component of human existence to understand the world around us. It's our highest spiritual endeavor to understand reality in the most potent way possible. And they're taking a huge shit all over all of that.
They're afraid of it. It doesn't serve power to understand the world perfectly. And certainly for the common man, and it's actually within our grasp to have a solid understanding of at least the material world around us. And they can't allow it. And mostly, what can't they allow? An understanding of our own biology. We have to live these fantasies about race and now sex. And you think I think there's a logic to how they're going after sex. It's sexual identity now. It's the identity part more than the sex. It's the identity, because it's like they've made this progression. They worked their way down. They took away your religion. They took away your nationhood, They take away the family. They get closer and closer to you. And what can they do? They can't take away you entirely. They can't erase your core individuality. There's something, I think, even beneath the sex, just as as a gamete, at some point you're not even a boy or a girl yet. In fact, I think they can manipulate you at that point to make you go one way or the other. But, it literally is going as deep as they can into destroying individuality. It's the most perverse thing in the world, because it's all, and they people who believe this think this. It all comes out of the Enlightenment values, all the individualism that was sort of invented during the Enlightenment, this post-religious period that came upon us, and all this stuff that we like, the individual rights and freedom, liberty, but they're going after it. I mean, and all they've done is, what can they do if they take away your sexual identity? And part of the gender confusion, I think, isn't just about me and you respecting the pronouns of some trans woman. It's about us being confused about our own sexuality, right? It's about us not feeling. At some point, being non-binary is going to be, what's the old joke? First you got to tolerate it, then it's required. Well, soon it's going to be required for us to be non-binary. Maybe, and I don't think it'll get this far, because people will revolt before it gets this far, but maybe the world they're looking for is one where I don't get to assert that I'm a man, that everybody's in a sense non-binary, and nobody gets to be just a man or a woman, and that we're all in some limbo, in some fluid state.
Yeah, I think the overarching goal is, at this point, it's pretty clear that everybody will be queer. That is the mandate. But it really makes you wonder, because if we get rid of straight people, or just being purely heterosexual, men like women, women like men, if we get rid of that as being the standard, then something else just becomes the standard. And then you have to get rid of that. Because, the moment that everybody becomes queer isn't anything, because queer is all about being whatever the majority isn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think the queers have really thought that part through, of queerdom, of, oh, hey, we're the different ones, but we want everybody to realize that they're secretly queer. But once everybody does, then it's queer, queer isn't going to be sexy anymore. The same way gay. The same way queer is the new gay, because that's what's happening. Gay people aren't fucking cool anymore. The gay movement isn't cool anymore.
Yeah.
You got to be some other type of freakazoid.
It's not enough to be, I don't know. I think the hierarchy's developed still. That's maybe what transphobia is about too, is that gay was too successful. The gays were too successful in normalizing themselves.
Yeah, they end up, they're CEOs now. They're, you see a lot of gay people in the tech world making six figures. They're fully integrated into society, so there's no oppression narrative for gay people anymore, really.
They're actually upper middle class, and they're, as a group, they tend to make more money and everything else. So this bourgeois group, All right. And they still run things, though, I think, because at the end of the day, it's guys running things, and now it's gay guys. But it's still guys are at the end of the day doing the work. But yeah, it's like they had to create these new identities, and with the trans thing, what's really remarkable about it was how quickly they got up and running a pretty durable new, identity for the identity politics canon, like right up there with black people as, in the civil rights narrative, right up there with women's and the feminists. In fact, they've knocked the women kind of off the stage, you know. They're kind of beating up the feminists right now.
Yeah, feminism seems to be probably on its deathbed. It's really at odds with the trans movement, and the trans movement is clearly taking over every angle of the identity politics movement that it can. Part of, you think about, like, if you think about, we're talking about what's the deal with Antifa not really being around anymore, not being out in the streets anymore. And part of it is probably that these people are just focused on something else now, which a lot of the trans stuff is probably overtaking it. And maybe they're just focused on trans activism, but there's not enough really happening in the trans activist world. Like this whole idea, you always hear trans people are dying in the streets.
Yeah,
they're dying in the
really
streets, but
yeah.
they're not really happening. And if they are happening, it's because trans people live massively disproportionately dangerous chaotic lives, drug addiction, prostitution. And no, they're not forced into it. They're just doing shit like that.
And those deaths aren't getting people out in the streets, and they have to be able to pin it on cops or white people.
It's interesting because you think about how it really kind of puts out in the open how few trans people there actually are. It's really like 1 in 1,000 people probably. And so they're just not really interacting with the police all that much. And so you're really not seeing the same numbers of trans people who are, if you had a moment that would be nationally televised where a cop beat the shit out of a trans person.
Yeah, we haven't had that. We have not had that big moment. They haven't had their big Stonewall moment, right? They're
Rodney King. Where's the Rodney King trans tape?
Yeah, you think there would be a couple of cases because they keep telling us that, trans people are getting killed in greater numbers. And there's always the implication. And they never come out and say it outright, but it's always just implying that it's because of the bigots and there's these rednecks, I guess, running them down in the streets.
Yeah, part of the trans grift is that they're always talking about dying. If you don't get them the surgery, they're gonna die. If if we don't get them their rights, they're gonna die.
Do you want a living son or a dead daughter? Can you imagine being a doctor? You've gone to medical school. You've gone to fucking medical school. You have at least have that much intelligence. You took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, and you're gonna tell somebody this horseshit line. And obviously post-op transsexuals may be far more likely to kill themselves than not. I'm pretty sure that's the case, but we don't even know because they don't even want to know. These guys who say this don't want to know.
Nothing. I mean, the only thing that made me lose more faith in the medical community than COVID was the transgender thing. You gotta be a real fucking scumbag to be a doctor and be down with this stuff. God, man, like I thought doctors are supposed to be like hyper pragmatic, very rational thinkers. And that's what really makes a lot of people think that this whole thing is just a grift to make a bunch of money. You got somebody top bottom surgery, you got somebody $75,000 instantly in one day. You can do that whole thing in one day. And then you've got at least another $75,000, maybe $150,000 in procedures after that that you're at the end of the day, you're talking 200K a person. That's, you get a Lamborghini, every one of these kids that you get. Doc gets a fucking Lamborghini, a new Lamborghini, every single kid whose dick he cuts off.
And people will show up to do it. And you saw that video clip that went viral of a doctor at Johns Hopkins or one of these big schools saying, pitching this. She was bragging to her peers about how she successfully pitched her plan for this, I guess, a whole trans surgery wing in the hospital. She pitched it because, said, yeah, there's a lot of money in this because of the aftercare. The aftercare for trans surgery. And, the aftercare for something like bottom surgery is often trying to fix all the disgusting complications that arise from this stuff, like hair growing inside their fake vagina and the thing trying to heal itself up because it's essentially a wound and it wants to close up, and they put a thing in there that's a dildo, and they have another name for it, to try and keep it open and try and train it to be open. So disgusting and horrible. Yeah, and people are doing it all over. Not just the doctors are doing it, right? And the media's incurious. The media's like, yeah, okay. Well, they're the experts, right? And it's so obvious that everybody is just this mix of, I don't know, cowardice and what? What's the other element besides greed? Is that all it takes?
I think it comes back to kind of what I was mentioning before, where we have to ask ourselves with all of these things, whether it's the racist bullshit or the transgender bullshit, the environmental bullshit, or whatever topic we're talking about, what place does a culture have to be at collectively to where they can be captured by stuff like this? I think that's the other element, is just weakness. This isn't a strong culture that we're in. I mean,
no,
whether you're talking about individual demographics, white culture is currently at its weakest point in recent memory. Black culture is at its weakest point in recent memory. And there is no cohesive element that is uniting us together in ways that you really only saw back in the 80s and 90s. America, and then maybe into the very early 2000s.
9/11. It all ended after 9/11. 9/11 was heartwarming. The way we dropped it all. We forgot all about it for, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah, man,
but it was beautiful. I mean, I'm a sap, maybe.
Yeah.
Boomer sap, maybe. But I swear to God, it was briefly beautiful. But the rot that set in after, it didn't take that long before it to set back in, and it's just gotten worse since. But some people say it this way. I've heard somebody say it. I want to go back to 9/12. 9/12 was the last time we were okay. Somehow.
Yeah.
After fucking 9/11. 9/12 was the last time this country was healthy in any way.
And 9/11 wasn't really a bounce back necessarily. It wasn't like, we kind of lost our cohesion and then 9/11 happened and then it brought us back together. I think 9/11 was just, we still had that sense of togetherness leading up into that moment, and it carried us through that moment. And the way we, survived psychologically, collectively survived that moment is a testament to the sense of cohesion that we had. I don't know what happened between 2002 and 2010, where the woke stuff really,
right,
that new decade where the woke stuff really started to kind of rear its head. And then by mid 2010s, this became a thing that there was just no, the floodgates were open and there was no turning it off. But you're right. 9/11, early 2000s leading into like 2010, that was a pivotal decade where something broke and America collectively gave up on itself and its sense of patriotism.
I think when 9/11 hit, we were I mean, we weren't perfect. All these things were, these underlying problems were there, but we were still together enough as a single nation that when this incredible event happened and it was viewed as a collective attack, we weren't so far apart that we didn't naturally come together just as any nation would. You know, that wouldn't be possible now, right? And we 9/11 now, I don't think that would even bring us together. There's nothing that would. And these crazy people are talking about going to war with China right now, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think another 9/11, the cohesion after that would be possible again today. The political binary is so much more apparent now.
There's a thing like on Twitter, like every 9/11, on Black Twitter, there'll be a bunch of black people just tweeting like, fuck you, we don't give a fuck about 9/11.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's just so, it's soured so much. Yeah. The race hate, as I don't think, is not going to be put back in the bottle. I don't know. This is the kind of stuff it takes generations to get away from, I suspect. We got a whole generation of young black Americans now who've been totally propagandized and seeped in hatred. And it's not going to be a nice problem that we're going to have as these people come of age and get older.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how I'm kind of somewhat skeptical as to what is the collective zeitgeist of contemporary black America as it pertains to white people. And I still get the feeling, man, that it's mostly just liberal white women, leftist white women that are really at the forefront of the anti-white movement. Obviously some of that sentiment has captured black America, but modern black Americans are not really known for their protest organizing. They're not known for their contemporary social movements. When you look at what were the factors that really made BLM what it is, I mean, all three of those bitches talk about being Marxists, and they're very well trained in all of the tactics that really organizationally turn this thing into what it is. And I mean, those women were probably mentored by leftist white women, professors, Marxist professors,
Jewish women usually.
Yeah, but I'm not. I don't see. I mean, maybe we need to go to Chicago or something like that to see what's really on people's minds, black people's minds. BLM is such a weird thing in that it's obviously got the face of black America, but it doesn't appear to have the infrastructure.
There's nothing there. There's no real BLM. It's there's no single Black Lives Matter organization.
Yeah,
there's a few that use it that are questionable groups.
It's like a splinter
of
cell group, the way Antifa is. Yeah, it's organized in like all of these little tiny collectivist movements.
And a bunch of money though has been donated to the BLM cause, to these various groups. That just goes nowhere. I mean, that was another thing that happened with the 2020s riot and the change. So they kind of won here in 2020 when they rioted over George Floyd. And BLM, the movement and slogan and everything was somewhat controversial still before the George Floyd riots, and then BLM became mainstream. And I started hearing the radio commercials here in Portland that summer, BLM radio commercials, and the smooth black-voiced announcer would come on, Black Lives Matter, and it was, donate here.
They were radio?
They were radio spots. But it's curious, with all the money that's gone into BLM, you'd think there would be more of this. But there were radio commercials, they're gone. They were just a few. And then there were bus ads, and there were ads on the bus stops.
Oh, how about the Portland is your white fragility showing signs?
That was some weird thing.
Those are fucking that was early. That was
not BLM. Yeah, that was some weird shit early, long time ago.
Was that pre BLM?
That was like 4 years ago. Yeah. No, that had nothing to do with BLM. It was just who. I don't know the organization behind it.
Yeah,
It was
some
just
nonprofit.
Some random bullshit.
Yeah.
Organization. There was that one. There was another one too. I forget what it was. That was similarly outrageous, stupid bullshit like that. Is your white privilege showing? Yeah. So, but anyway, that's another thing I thought though too, because I heard the ads and there were a few, and then they went away, thankfully. And then there were some like I said, the bus stop ads, and then they went away. And I thought, for all the money that's flowing into this cause, BLM. Where does it actually go, right? It just kind of finds its way into the various groups like the Democratic Party. But you know what I mean? You would think there would be more presence for that brand, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, where are all of the community centers being built in predominantly black neighborhoods? Where are all the gymnasiums being built in predominantly black neighborhoods? Where is all the funding for historically black colleges? Where is the building of a brand new? I mean, you got
they could have built
tens of millions of dollars.
Grand university with some of that money.
Could have built a whole new university. Where are the scholarship funds? For, where's that? Where are the diversity scholarships? They're now being sued by California and Washington State for embezzling funds. There's probably going to be more states that'll tack on to that. I mean, it's obviously a total scam, but and I mean, here in Portland, you saw guys. I mean, it's so funny. It's like dissecting the morality of this. In Portland, you had these pop-up canopy tents, and they were just selling BLM merch, not affiliated to the organization whatsoever. Right. But there's all of these grifters who are just making small businesses out of the corporatization of BLM. They're selling shirts that are made by slaves in China,
right?
to free the oppression of black Americans. Like, give me a fucking break. Like, it's such a joke, man. But just the industry behind it, it's so disingenuous.
Yeah. Well, we know all that. There was that carnival atmosphere around the rioting. The rioting in 2020 was kind of a little occupation downtown Portland, and there were all these tents around selling the merch. There was what was it? Riot ribs. Good old riot ribs.
Riot ribs.
My favorite. Anyway. Where does all that money go? And BLM took in something like almost $1 billion somehow under that name, just went to various organizations.
Yeah. Some of it, and it's hard to follow. Like, you get different numbers on when you
they don't know
stories about it, but you're looking in the hundreds of millions of. God, what was it? 1.7, I think it was 1.7 billion was donated in white guilt money to BLM this in the year after George Floyd died, and that's encapsulating all of the everybody who attached themselves to BLM stuff. So that like most of that money, they busted a bunch of guys for telling people in their neighborhood, I'm with Black Lives Matter, and then they rake in like $250,000, and they're just leaving it for themselves. They have no attachment to BLM whatsoever, and that's what the really crazy thing is like white people just see a black guy and they're like saying to the white people, I'm with Black Lives Matter, and the white people are just like, oh, of course.
Oh, well, because they're
he's black. It checks out.
Yeah. He's black. He's alive.
Yeah, He's black, and the cops haven't killed him yet. So clearly, he's spending his last days on this earth doing the good Lord's work.
It's funny too. Yeah, these white people are softened up for this grift, and if the con man black guy who wants to pretend to be BLM has anything on the ball, I mean, these are just easy prey.
And it really exposes this larger world beyond just white guilt money for BLM, of just people. It's the same. Before it was BLM, it was like the white people the white leftists who would sponsor an African kid and then like put his picture on the fridge. Yeah. Oh God, that's the worst. And then, obviously, that's a total scam too. But it's just like, now we've brought it home. Now we've brought race grifting from this international nonprofit world into the people that are living here. It was a lot better when it was Sally Struthers and I could donate $1 a month to feed some Ethiopian kid. That'd be hilarious if BLM started like a program where you could like sponsor a local black Portland kid and like just give him free shit.
Yeah. And would give him just tacky shit.
You could put him on your fridge.
Jordans. Yeah. And it'd be great if he was just obese as fuck. He's a thick set brother.
He doesn't actually need anything.
We got him right, and he's got this sullen look on his face. He doesn't appreciate anything we do. Right? And he's wearing some bling, or maybe he thinks he's a gangster already. Still a little young kid. Got the McDonald's there.
Your photo on the fridge of him is like him in a brand new Camaro with like Tyrese, a gold chain hanging down. Like thank you.
I would love to have that picture up there and have liberal friends come over and say, "This is Tyrese we're sponsoring."
I think I would sponsor Joanne Hardesty.
Yeah. Well, she needs some meat on her bones.
She needs some food. She spent all her money at the casino.
Yeah.
And she needs a cheeseburger. And I'm going to start a GoFundMe. Joanne Hardesty's Please Feed Me Fund.
Yeah.
It's totally legit. Please donate.
I wish you wouldn't joke about Joanne because, she lost her election. So she's out there, right? And she's looming out there. And I just know she's going to come back with a vengeance. At some point, she's out there.
She's gonna pop out of a coffin in some graveyard like the fucking crypt keeper. Like, you thought I was gone, but this is just the beginning.
God, she's probably going nuts because she got beat by some like normie real estate sponsored liberal candidate.
It's Thursday, 8:40 p.m. She's got to be at the casino. She's got to be she's there 7 days a week now. She doesn't have anything else to do.
I bet she is at L&I every week, every day.
You saw the video of the guy that approaches her, right?
He would approach to her?
Yeah, it's like another black guy. He like walks up to her and is like taking a video of her, and her friend's like, "You need to go away."
I saw somebody took pictures of her at the slots.
Yeah, I think that's the guy.
Yeah. No, I would leave her alone. I mean, what's the point? But.
Yeah, I mean, she's small time. It's fucking city council. Like, who cares?
Well, yeah.
At this point, if she had won again, I would definitely fuck with her. But she's just a citizen now.
She did some damage. She was effective. You got to give her that. I mean, right? She wanted to cut the cops. She wanted to gut the police, and she was furious.
But that's what I'm saying in general is like. Leftists, for all of their shortcomings, they're effective. Like, they're better at being effective.
They're more political. Yeah, like those Patriot Pair guys we were talking about. They're not political guys. They're just kind of dopes in a way. And they had it's interesting to see the two different models, right? It's like two different cultural groups. It's like they come from two different countries. Antifa, they have their organization. And it's LARPy and it's cringy and it's weird, but it's like I said, it's a little more sophisticated than the Patriot Prayer guys who are
Organizationally not an individual level, but yeah, organizationally speaking.
We went to the one, remember? And it was a disaster. They had a little rally, and they had to move it out of downtown because there was so much heat coming up with this rally coming up. Everybody's freaking out because Antifa is going to show up in numbers to shut down the right-wing rally, right? And they moved it like 10, 15 miles to Park Rose, to an abandoned Kmart parking lot, and had this cringy rally that it thought it was awful. But, like I said, we saw their level of organization. And there was some there. They got people out there. They had a little stage set up. But there's such fundamental differences, between the two of them. And Tiny Toweezy, he's the big Samoan or whatever guy who was the leader of that one. That's the other guy that they sent up. And I don't know, last I heard, he was still sitting in jail facing 5 years for some relatively minor sounding shit. This is a guy who got, remember, shot in the foot by Antifa one time.
Yeah, and that guy, whatever happened to the Antifa that shot him, I forget.
I have to go back and check.
I think he got charged.
He got charged, and he was in jail, and he's a crazy autistic head case. And so he was charged.
Oh, yeah, he freaked out at his arraignment, didn't he, or something like that?
And it might be a whole scene. Guys sometimes do this, play crazy, right? And so he was proving, this was months ago, and I have to go back and check. But he was acting crazy, and they were having issues just getting him through the hearings and shit. But anyway, yeah, Tiny, and they were trying to hang him with an assault charge that would get him 5 years. It's funny. They're using Oregon's mandatory minimum laws, which they hate. They were passed in the mid-'90s, around the same time Clinton passed his anti-crime bills that are really unpopular on the left now. But they were highly effective. They established mandatory minimums. They put a bunch more people in jail and did probably help lower the crime rate. Now, though, they're absolutely awful because they put a lot of black people in jail. Anyway, we still have on the books our mandatory minimum laws that we passed, and they're using them. Dwight Schmidt, our DA, Mike Schmidt, who actually lobbied against that. They're trying to repeal that law because mandatory minimums are excessive, they say. Maybe they are. But he still uses them against the Patriot. He used them to get that guy 10 years, Alan Swinney. He got 5 years on 2 separate assault charges using that mandatory minimum rule. And they're trying to do basically the same thing with Toweezy. It's just a super minor assault charge. I don't know, like pushing somebody, really ridiculous. And they're trying to hang him with a 5-year sentence doing that.
Yeah, how about that other weird shit that's coming out with the white terrorist laws? What's the name of that lady who's proposing that?
Was it McKinney or one of the black women's?
I don't remember what her name was, but yeah, it's to where if somebody who committed a hate crime, you are attached to them by viewing their content or something like that. That you are in or if you produce content that somebody else sees and then they commit a hate crime, if you're considered to be their influencer or one of them, you're a conspirator. You are a co-conspirator to that crime.
Yes.
That's like the Patriot Act on steroids.
Oh, yeah. And all these, they're following the war on terror method in the war on white supremacy, and they're going to be using the same laws.
Yeah, we're taking your rights away to protect you. Don't worry, we're protecting you by taking your rights away.
No, it's a disaster. They already had the model in place for the war on terror, so-called war on terror. And now they're just going to turn it on us, and they're just going to apply the same model. And you see it. I wanted to talk about this. Yeah, in the FBI's new direction, is the language is just like the language that they use when they're talking about potential Islamic terrorists, right? Oh, people are getting radicalized online. Individuals are getting radicalized. Lone wolf terrorists are going to pop up, you know. So we have to do something about, and before it was, Al-Qaeda propaganda online, and they would, try to freak you out by telling you how easy it was to get Al-Qaeda propaganda online. And now they're trying to freak you out by how easy it is to get white supremacy online. And, by white supremacy, that might mean some guy writes an essay critical of BLM, or, it's a pretty broad category, this white supremacy. It's a big thing.
It's unreal. Yeah, who is behind the sudden push for
No, it has to be deliberate.
Wanting to understand white rage.
No, it has to be deliberate. Yeah, and that's what people don't get. I don't know why. It's not like all of a sudden, logically, we became this concerned about racism against black people. No, we're being directed to this, and this is
and not just concern about racism toward black people, but concern about it. It is such a bizarre thing to take the majority demographic in a country and say that they are the reason that everything is going wrong.
It's unprecedented, and that reveals also that it's not natural. It's not like, that's what they're telling you, that, oh gosh, we're learning new things. It's kind of similar to the trans thing. I was telling you this the other day, of Bill Nye when he was selling us on this trans stuff. And one of these videos says, I was struck by him saying, well, we used to think that sex was male or female, but now we're learning that it isn't. It is such a bullshit idea that we are learning something new. No, we're being told to view it differently. It's not like we looked through a microscope and we said, whoa, look at that gender spectrum, right? There it is. We'd never seen it before, like a fucking constellation or something, right? And they're similar with race. It's like all of a sudden we're discovering the depths of white. We didn't know 5 years ago that we were wholly rotten to the core. And people are buying this shit. Why?
The word learning becomes a very interesting word. It's more about like a dog learns not to take a shit in the living room.
Right.
They're not really learning anything.
Well, what was it?
They're just finally obedient.
Yeah. The teachable moment. Remember when that was a phrase? Teachable moment.
Yeah, there's no knowledge gained. Like,
yes,
they talk about
behavior modified.
They talk about obedience like it's knowledge.
Yeah,
it's a core component of
what
leftism.
Was the Ayn Rand thing? All power comes from the barrel of a gun. Well, now it's going to be all learning comes from the barrel of a gun. Yeah, it's going to be behavioral modification, and that really is, the distinction between what goes on and what it sounds like is going on in universities with the indoctrination. It's not learning at all. It's not even learning the wrong thing. It's behavior modification. And let's program these people to think this way. It's working insanely. It's working very well. And it's funny. I mean, the push seems to be let's do it in let's do it in high schools. Let's do it in elementary schools. It's worked so well in higher education. Maybe it'll backfire by them trying to go after every younger kids. Maybe these kids will develop, these Zoomers will develop their, natural rebellious, youthful rebellion that's supposed to be there in every generation. Every generation should have some element of that, of wanting to throw off what they've been told. And what they're being taught now is so awful.
And they're not allowed to... You're just not allowed to be proud of anything that this country has ever accomplished anymore. You have to be ashamed of all of it. Everything has to be a reckoning. and atonement. Um, the average young person is not taught to find meaning in anything other than oppression narratives. And those oppression narratives are all about people who don't look like you and me.
Yeah.
And so that means that white people don't have meaning anymore. That's the real goal, specifically.
You don't get meaning in your life. Your life has no meaning.
Dissolve all, and that's where you see, the cultural anti-whiteness. It's not just about making white people look bad. It's about dissolving meaning and all concepts of knowledge. Yeah. That's just a part of the reality puzzle that they're deconstructing, is the meaning element of it.
Yeah.
Can't believe in yourself anymore.
And like I said, there's a perverse logic. I mean, it's almost like the expansion of individual rights is now contracting. And it's coming back, and they're taking it, like I said, they're going after your very gender now. And it's like what outrages them, Cam? I think what outrages them the most is the idea that you're out there with your own mind, and your independence, and it's like they almost as if they don't even care if we don't, because here we are, and we're not doing anything to stop it, sadly, right? We're no threat to them, I would think, but I still feel like they're coming for me, or that's the impression you get. It's like that's the impression they're trying to send, is that, oh, you might not be doing anything, but we know you're thinking all that shit out there, and we're coming after you eventually. We're going to come and collect you, white supremacists,
Well, I mean, if you hear them talk about institutional this and systemic that, and really what the institution from their perspective of white supremacy is what's going on inside of our heads.
Yeah.
We will not surrender. For us to surrender truth to the postmodernists is for us to surrender whiteness. Like they're conflated.
Yeah.
Reality is whiteness, and whiteness is reality, and that's what the anti-racists want you to surrender. It's not just admitting that you're racist. It's purposefully deluding yourself into it's like dive headfirst into the brainwash. Just come into the vat where the liquid that will cleanse your brain of everything that is true. You're just gonna float in it for a while, and it's gonna be like that Men in Black thing that zaps you in the eyes, where you forget everything that's real, and then it's their world. That's the goal. It's so obvious that it's a fucking power grab for reality itself, that they conflate whiteness with reality, and reality with whiteness. And what they're really, I mean, I don't see, I think it's two sides of the same coin. They're trying to take out whiteness and reality, and those things they see as the same thing. The whole construct of reality for them is a product of whiteness.
Yeah, well, all the assaults on rationality and logic, math, reason, I mean, they're also appealing to people, to non-white people who don't feel a part of this thing, people who resent Western culture, and they're trying to turn us against it too, because they're telling us all of these people are not happy with Western culture, or they're not thriving under it, or whatever, or they suffered under its colonialism and its conquest. But the people ultimately driving this thing understand what reality is. Like I said, they've got us all thinking, or trying to get us all thinking that we're creating this new world, but they know it's never going to come to pass. And it's almost like the confusion, like the gender confusion, and the uncertainty. Uncertainty seems to be the big trademark. Like you said, going after truth itself. But they're still going to be masters of it, they think, right? I mean, it's almost like returning humanity to a pre-literate time, and we're supposed to exist out here in superstition and gross misunderstanding of our material world, and they're going to be there, some small elite, some small educated elite is going to be clued in as to what's real and what's not real. It's almost like that, like they're trying to return us to ignorance. And maybe there's a logic to that, in that the powerful don't really want you and I and the common man to be enlightened, or we don't. They want us to be docile. Obviously, they don't want us to be active intellectually, and wondering and questioning.
Yeah, I mean, if the average person understood the way the world worked and the capacity that myself, yourself, people that we see eye to eye with, if everybody viewed the world like that, there, you'd have, I mean, it'd make January 6th look like a fucking daycare center,
I wonder if sometimes
it would be overnight we would take over the whole fucking machine.
Yeah. Well, I wonder where the outrage is. I mean, I wonder where.
Distracted. It's on OnlyFans. It's on Pornhub. It's on Netflix. It's working. It's dead end job that it hates, and then they get home and just get blasted.
Or maybe it's got a good life and it's just insulating that way. And you've got a family and you don't want to fucking bring this horror into your home. You get to go home to your nice family every night still somehow.
Yeah,
for the time being.
Negative distractions and positive distractions, living too shitty of a life to give a shit and living too good of a life to give a shit. I mean, you really, it's a weird angle that America finds itself in, where, and in any hyper modern, hyper successful society, where things obviously are pretty bad right now with economics and cost of living, and the average person can't stay afloat anymore. The American dream seems dead, but it's still, relatively speaking, not a fight or flight mode emergency in the way that a rural African who has no access to clean drinking water might see. So it's this weird thing that seems to happen at the end of advanced civilizations and empires, where things are getting really bad, but it's going to be a while before things are so bad that the average person is ready to really get out there and stop watching OnlyFans to get out in the street and actually do something about anything.
Yeah, so it's sad what we're learning, I think, is that as long as I'm fed, as long as I feel relatively safe, there's no amount of indignity I won't suffer. And it doesn't speak well for us. But I mean, the way we got here is that they took away our identity. We had identity before, and we had ethnic identity first, and that was the first thing they went after. And they made it scandalous to be, white. They're still hammering away on that.
It's simultaneously the most tremendous privilege and also extremely illegal.
And it's funny that you'll still see these people, right? These black so-called academics that, saying outrageous things. They still say this thing, you're white, you have all the power. They're still saying this. It was always bullshit to think that every white person invoked some special privilege. That was never true. But to say it now, when the whole culture and the laws, I mean, the president just put a diversity officer in every agency, a political officer under the guise of diversity, equity, inclusion in every fucking executive, in every agency in the executive branch. And every agency has to submit a plan for what they're going to do to include representation. Where they're talking about, well, God damn it, we've got to put more black female pilots out there, or which is crazy. Nothing against black females, but if they're not showing up as pilots now, I'm not going to go out and find them and bring them in, right? If you're concerned about black female pilots, do everything you can to go out there and recruit the best, and help them show up ready. Maybe.
Yeah, where are they all?
Where are they? Where's all this talent, right? Again, yeah, where is all this massive talent? And here's my racist opinion, is that one thing that's happened with the civil rights movement is the black talent hasn't shown up.
No, of course it's not showing up.
We were
When was the
opening up the
last time you talked to a black person in general who mentioned anything about fucking aviation?
Yeah.
Like black people, it's a cultural thing. That's what a lot of people don't understand about these racial disparities. It's not like it's a white man's world in the airplane. Yeah, they have no interest in flying airplanes. Culturally
it's the whitest
speaking,
thing is flying an airplane.
Yeah.
White guys are the guys who go out and get their license and spend hours to learn to fly a Cessna, risking their life just so they can have the license because they think it's cool.
Yeah, you go
How many black guys have you ever seen do that?
You go to like a flight training place where you spend a week learning how to like the basics of flying or whatever. You go to a place like that in like the Portland metro area where let's just say we've got like 10% black people here, right? I guarantee you that the demographics of the roster of people who are going to flight training school, even though Portland is 10% black, you're probably seeing 99.5% white people going to go into there. You know, it's black people just don't want to learn how to fly airplanes. It's not a black person cultural thing.
And the one or two black guys you find doing that, there'll be those white acting black guys, right? It's so funny. You go up and talk to these guys. I love these guys. I love them.
Hi, sir.
Hey, buddy, what's up?
Jamal Jones here for my first day of flight training.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Demetrius with 2 apostrophes. But he's probably his dad is probably so disappointed.
Demetrius.
Yeah, right. With like 3 down, 2 apostrophes and an asterisk or something, and he's just the whitest guy just because, I don't know, his white mom, it just took. And I love these guys. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, sir. Word to your mother.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Well, what are we at?
We're probably running late.
Running long.
All right.
Want to wrap it?
Yeah, anyway, we should. Any final thoughts on your end?
No.
Nothing from the major? Did the major make the shot? Can you see the major on there?
Yeah, you can see him up there.
All right.
I wonder if we can do a digital zoom on him. I don't know how to do that.
We're still learning the technology, and we'll probably do this again, maybe some live streams. And so this has been the Portland Dispatch for February 23rd. All right, that's Cam Boden, my co-host. I'm Dennis Dale. Thanks a lot.